Welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. I'm joined by Pedro Del Rodriguez. Borussia Dortmund today, 3-1 win over Shakhtar Donetsk, finishing 10th in the table. Pedro, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine, actually. As you guys are seeing, I'm not using my usual Dortmund jersey, but I'm using a Santos jersey in honor to Neymar coming back home. My boy, really happy. I thought it was going to be really hard to make my mood change today, and Dortmund won, but then Santos lost right after. So, yeah, it's already three losses in a row for Santos this beginning of the season. So, yeah, pretty shaky, but I'm glad Dortmund did well in this Champions League matchup. It really needed a win in 2025.
Well, unlike Borussia Dortmund, Santos have been active in the window. David Washington, I believe, coming in, Neymar coming in. You got a lot of talent coming your way. Do Borussia Dortmund? That's a different question. Should Borussia Dortmund have some talent coming in? Also a different question. But let's talk about the match. What did you notice in this one?
A couple of things. First half, I thought it was pretty good. I did even the match reaction for the Dortmund Dispatch YouTube, and I really thought like the partnership between Girassi and Maxi Bayer was brilliant. I think it was above my expectations with these two. The way they moved, like in between the lines, dragging defenders and opening spaces for the likes of Adeyemi and Jamie Gittins. I thought it was pretty good, and I love the partnership in the way that it worked. Like the midfield dynamic was really good as well. Really glad it was a good bounce back from Tolberg because I wasn't in the last episode, but I didn't think Tolberg did well in the second half against Bremen. I thought he should have changed earlier before Bremen started rehearsing that comeback to the match. But I thought that was a nice bounce back. And the second half was a little bit underwhelming, I think, of course, due to the Gregor Kobel mistake. But I thought the boys overall, they're really resilient and they killed the game when they had the chance to. I mean, Gio Reyna, what the hell was even that assist? It was just crazy. And that chip finish from Ben Sebaini, crazy. Yeah, excited for the win, and hopefully we can keep performing like that, and in that sense, also getting to closer to European competitions in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, Gio Reyna got a little back heel happy in this one because the first one he did on the sideline to get Jimmy Gittins in behind worked out really well.
Yes.
So then he kept trying it. He got the assist on it, so you can't take away any. But like it was kind of funny because there were two or three there was another two opportunities. I don't need to exaggerate. After the assist, where he tried to do back heel again and it did not come off. I was like it's cool, it's fun, but it got stuck in his head a little bit because he was getting a little too fancy. But an excellent performance from him. An excellent performance, I think, all around from the team. The first goal, Karim Adeyemi fires in a shot. Garasi bundles it over the line. The second
He stole the
strike,
goal. Let's say as it is, he stole the goal from Adeyemi. That
I
was going
think
in.
that's an exaggeration. I'm not sure that was going in. Um, But yeah, so that goal very fun. Kareem Adeyemi again, like very very active. A lot of people I saw were a little critical of like some of his passing and giveaways and stuff, but I think he was just constantly trying to play the final ball, and it often didn't work out. But he created a really big chance for Garasi. Maybe it's by accident, but they all count the same. So gotta give him credit there. Also, the ball from Nico Schlotterbeck, like
Well,
the
the
announcer was like,
pre-assist.
"This guy's almost as good as like Matt Hummels." I think like at least in recent years, has been better in distribution this year than any of Matt Hummels' recent seasons. Like that's the Nico Schlotterbeck we're talking about. Borussia Dortmund needs to figure it out just to because people deserve to understand how good Nico Schlotterbeck is, and when Borussia Dortmund is incompetent, they just won't. Also, we got to talk about the crimes that Nuri Shaheen did. Pedro, can you tell me about the crimes?
There's a few of them. I think we still have to wait for a proper trial, but I mean, like, it's amazing how the team massively underperformed under Nuri Sahin. I mean, some of these guys they got better as we spoke before, like Felix and Matcha, and JB Gittens got his first season, but it's also due to his talent and the fact that he has started for once. But I mean, like, it's amazing how you have the pieces, but like Sahin didn't know what to do with them, or at least set them up like to success with consistency. And like only in two games, of course, in the first game, I didn't think. I think Tuber did well the basics in the first half of the match against Bremen, and also with that scenario, we should have closed the match. It didn't happen, but in this match, I think we were pretty constant, and the team played pretty well. Like the pieces, we have the pieces to play good football and go for the heads of European football. But Nur Shahin massively underperformed, massively unutilized some players. I'm still waiting for the young Koto big shot as the starters. Not like Ryerson did have had a bad match. That's not it. But getting those guys the minutes and get the young players also to have the opportunities to showcase why they are so talented and why they can contribute to the team. And Karina Demium, just as I said, for me, he was the most effective winger we had in this match. I think Jamie Gittins was a little bit inconsistent in decision making. And Duranville, of course, he's young, 16 to 17 years old. He's still gonna develop a lot. But for me, Adeyemi was the best guy from the extreme wingers in this match. But Sahin, yeah, unfortunately that didn't work out. But yeah, I think we really needed that break and just to change the environment a little bit, and that's exactly what happened in this win.
Yeah, so I need to say that what Shaheen did to Garasi, like unbelievably bad. Like what a waste! What a waste! I've talked about the massive expense like per year that we are spending on the total Garasi package. Like it's not a bargain. It can't be a bargain when you spend that much money. Like people will look at the transfer fee difference, but Maxi Bayer like is much cheaper than Seru Guirassy. But the difference is when Seru Guirassy has a competent manager and is able to do what he wants to do, it's truly special because if you look at the last two matches, the XG is going up and up, and he's 3 goals and an own goal forced, and prior to this past weekend, his last non-penalty goal was like November 2nd, that first week of November. And granted, you have 2 weeks off there, but you're talking about it's now over 2 months later. Um, for his last non-penalty league goal, obviously he scored a couple of non-penalty goals in the Champions League in that time. But even then, we're talking about two non-penalty goals from November 3rd to like January 20 something. So we're still talking about 2 goals in about 10 matches, whatever it was. And now in the last 2 matches, the underlying numbers are getting better, and he's got 3 goals and an own goal forced. So what Nuri Sahin did, like he really had people believing that this squad was mid-table. Like we can all stop that nonsense now because Mike Tolberg, like, is he a good manager? I don't know. I think right now in 2 games he's gotten the team to play up to the sum of its parts, which is what you would call an average manager. Guys that can consistently get more than the quality out of each player. Like those are exceedingly rare managers. There are not many out there. Um, Tolberg is probably not one, but just giving attacking players the freedom to get forward and getting them close together to do some of these nice combination plays. Like you had the little ball in behind from Jamie Gittins to Seru Guirassy to create that chance. You have Ben Sebaini, a fullback, coming in field to combine with Giorena. Like we've talked about how under Nuri Shaheen, every chance was coming from out wide. So that ball from Giorena, like that's one of our first goals like that. And this is Borussia Dortmund. That's something we were known for in years past. And you had players like Rafael Guerrero who loved to invert, Marco Royce, who was so good in those tight spaces, Jadon Sancho. Like he brought that back, and like that really Nuri Shaheen tricked people into thinking we weren't capable of that anymore. we might not be as good as it. And that's certainly the case. Like, we don't have Marco Royce. Like, prime Marco Royce is one of the best players in the world, but we're not there. But we're a lot closer to that than people were thinking. So,
True, true. And also, like, I think Tolberg, he did a very decent job. Like, he might be not like a high ceiling manager necessarily, but I think he did pretty well with the time he got and the situation that Dortmund was at the moment. So I think it was pretty solid. I mean, I think against Werder Bremen, he did well, but at the same time, in a situation like that, where 2-0 advantage in the scoreboard, and you're facing a Werder Bremen side, even with one extra guy on the pitch for them, and they struggle with possession. That's the thing. Bremen struggle with possession. So when you give possession to Bremen, you should put yourself in a position to win the match with a 2-0 goal lead, especially with pacey wingers like Adeyemi and Jamie Gittins at the same time on the pitch. But for me, the problem was when he substituted both of those guys at the same time and didn't
but
correct the
Pedro,
back line
we
in
need to
time.
talk about this because this is like long. You need a
Sure, sure.
coach at a certain level that needs to be able to plan long term. And so right now, Borussia Dortmund did not qualify in the top eight, which is something we'll get onto later in our dud of the week because Mr. Hans Joachim Watzke, that's entirely your fault. We're going to talk about why.
Yes.
We could bring up Shaheen again, but we've done enough of that. We're going to talk about Watzke later.
He's
We're going to have a whole
already.
segment on that. I'm already upset about it because I thought of it, a little distracted. But let me get back into the point. Like, you have to have the long term planning. When you're playing with 10 men, you have your nine outfield players running for 10 people because they need to sustain that level. And that's kind of not the biggest reason why we lost in that match. Like, you have a bit of bad luck. Like, the Bittencourt strike, like, that's not something he's going to do against the other 16 Bundesliga
For
clubs.
0.04
But
XG on that chance only.
he hates Borussia Dortmund, so he'll do it against us, our former player. So, like, you have a bit of luck there, which really hurts you. And also we need to talk about like the difficulty of the situation. Obviously, we're not going to talk too much about that match. We had an episode already out on that, but it was obviously a little different, a little funnier, a little less analytical. The one thing I want to say is you have a guy get sent off early, you have a guy get injured, and you're forced to play these like backup midfielders, which puts you in such a difficult position and it makes it harder for you to change the shape because you're running the risk of finishing a game with nine men rather than 10 if you make a change and someone picks up a yellow and you can't sub them out when they're at risk of a red, or someone gets injured. And you also have to keep in mind the long term planning. We have Anton Heats very clearly on a minutes restriction right now, the way they're using him, and I'm very happy that they're doing so responsibly, unlike what Nuri Shaheen was doing. And we have Kareem Adeyemi, who has a history of injury issues. And I've talked about it before. Like, I'm not seeing the data of his fitness levels, but you can clearly look at his injuries and his usage. And it's like last year under Terzic, it was um, a full 90 after not playing more than like 30 minutes in months. And he gets his muscle injury. And this year, he's getting eased into the starting 11. He gets in the starting 11. He plays 82 minutes against Bochum, even though we're 2 goals up at home. And the game's kind of gone, and he doesn't get subbed. And then he's getting asked to go play midweek a couple days later, Saturday to a Tuesday. And like, had the game been on a Wednesday, maybe you give him a couple minutes into the second half. But I don't know why you would ever be playing Kareem Adeyemi when we're 5-1 up at the half against Celtic. Like, utilizing players in a more intelligent way. Like, you can't complain about injuries and then ask for every player to play every minute. I know I've asked like for Anton to play over Shan, and obviously like at a certain point you need to look and say, okay, he's probably not fit. He's probably not fully fit, and you're trying to protect all these guys because we're gonna have at least 2 Champions League games. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I think you need to be more responsible with that. It cost us 2 points there, but at a certain point, like that has to be partially on the players. It's partially on the system change, and if you're Borussia Dortmund and you're not able to rotate players despite having such a massive spending advantage, that goes on to the squad planning, honestly. So I think there's so many ways to criticize that change, and I don't think the coach is the biggest one for me.
Yeah, honestly, I think I even, I mean, my main point was that, like, for me in that situation, like, I even wrote on the main takeaways of that match. I think Tober did well the basics, but he had to blame or he had some responsibility on the final result, and that for me it's definite, honestly, because I thought he took way too long to change the situation in a game that was calling for a few changes, and that of course that comes with experience and times in first team football and etc. And I think he might not be like high ceiling, but he has some interesting ideas. For instance, like you mentioned, Ben Sebaini, he played in the first half or majorly in this football match as a double pivot with Sabitzer, which I thought was really creative. And I always prefer Ben Sebaini playing in those areas. And he played really well, not only scoring the goal, but also trying to find space and opportunities in between Shakhtar's lines. So I thought it was really interesting idea from him. So I think he has some potential in there, but
Add some physicality,
there's
helps
still
Sabitzer
some.
with possession because that those are both issues.
Yeah, yeah. I was afraid. Like when I saw it, they were doing a double pivot, and especially Sabitzer being the main guy as the main pivot, coming closer to the back line. I was like, how does that is gonna work exactly? Like because Sabitzer is not that guy, but it worked well. We've been somebody giving him support, and Sabitzer, I think he had a pretty not eye-catching performance, but it was a decent match for him in that position, which I haven't seen him perform well in that role for a while. So in that sense, I thought it was really creative on his part, and I really think he bounced back from his first match against Bremen. And of course, I honestly think he could have a good uh, role as the manager if he would stay, and that's probably what we're gonna talk about in a few minutes from now with the Kovac deal.
Well,
Yeah, you
let's
want to go in
go
that
back
subject?
into the game because I have another question for you. I assume you're not
Sure.
going to go with Ryerson for one of your stars of the match day.
No, no,
Okay,
not
because
going
then
to.
I didn't think so. But I did want to talk about Ryerson on set pieces. Because
Yes.
there were multiple instances in this match. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? I'm the Paul Rudd meme right now. Who would have thought? But
Exactly.
Julian Ryerson's set pieces were genuinely the best we've seen all season in a
Yeah,
match
yeah,
like this.
yeah.
This
No.
was an incredible set piece match. We didn't. I don't think we really got a goal out of it, but his service
Yeah,
was exceptional.
but it was interesting. Like we were even talking in the chat group, like because like you mentioned that before, and I told you like I noticed that. And for me, like honestly, I don't have the stats on that, but for me, from every time I saw a set piece or a corner, every time Ryerson was on that. I think honestly, I think he took every single set piece or corner in this match, and I was even surprised in the first one
No, I
because
think when
Ryerson is not
Gross
that
came
good.
on, he took a corner or two.
He took a
When
corner.
Gross
Okay.
came on, he took at least one or two corners. Because there was like the one where Ryerson made that really long run, and then he's looking for Garassi. The ball gets
Yeah.
blocked out for a corner, and it takes him like two
Uh,
minutes to get up, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I couldn't get you the hat trick." Hilarious moment. Love that from Ryerson. That's
yeah.
great
But
teammate stuff. Love the fight there. But after that, he did walk back and go on defense, and Gross took the corner. But the deep set pieces were excellent. Ben Sabaini got on the end of one. Garassi got
yeah.
on the end of one from the deep set pieces. I think he found Schlotterbeck on a corner, which ended up being a weak header. But Borussia Dortmund has struggled with set pieces for years. I don't think Julian Brandt's service is as bad as people make out. I just think it's not
Me neither.
as good as Borussia Dortmund needs. And Pascal Gross was brought in to kind of supplement that this season, and it's not necessarily been impressive to me. Um, Maybe that's the set piece coach. I don't know what it is because I'm not in training. But Julian Ryerson in this match, like I don't care if Gross is on the pitch because I'd keep Ryerson on him. I like the early returns. I need before I say that Ryerson's better than Gross. Um,
What?
I'm not saying that yet. I just think Ryerson needs to be given an opportunity to fail taking these set pieces because I've seen Gross struggle this season. I've seen Brandt struggle this season. I've seen Sabitzer struggle on some set pieces this season. I don't necessarily think I want to see Ryerson on a direct set piece at this point. I think Brent still deserves those. Maybe a Sabitzer, maybe a Bensabaini can take them. I think Arassi's taken a couple in his career. So that's I have a different pecking order on direct set pieces, but for these deep set pieces where we're looking for headed chances, crossing the ball into the area, Julian Ryerson for me has earned the right to fail. And when we get into our dud of the week, I'm going to be talking about another guy who I think has earned the right to fail over some guys who are continuously failing. But first, we'll be a bit more positive. Pedro, who is your star of the week?
My star of the week, man. Honestly, I was
There's an
reflecting
obvious
on it.
one.
I have a few options. I mean, the highest grades I gave on the player ratings today were both Schlotterbeck and Girassi. I think the obvious two choices of the best players on the pitch tonight. But I don't know. I really wanted to give like a shout out to Gio Reyna. I mean, what a cameo he had in the second half. That assist to Ben Sebaini was incredible on itself. And as you said, the Gittens pass on by the touchline and giving him the space to go all in. And there was a great XG chance for Girassi by the end of that play. So in that sense, I really like that from Gio. And I didn't think Brand was bad in this match at all. He had the assist. He was a little bit shaky in the beginning, but he found himself after the first 20, 25 minutes. But Gio really impressed me, honestly, after coming in the second half. So I'll give my shout out to Gio. He's my start of the week.
That's a great one. Schlotterbeck is definitely deserving of a shout. Had we three hosts, he might get one because he's not going to get mine. Because it's got to be Sergio Garassi. Because this guy, I know he went up to Terzic, gave him the big hug in his last match after he converted the penalty, but this guy's looked like a night. He's had a night and day difference since Shaheen left, and in this match, if he continues to look better and better every single week, once he gets a real manager per se, um, then we could be seeing a very fun rest of the season for Borussia Dortmund because this isn't the player we watched since the start of the season. Like I know he started hot, but there were so many penalties in that early stretch. Right now, what he's doing is consistently getting on the end of big chances and consistently getting on the end of just chances in general. It's no longer just like cross and inshallah football. It's literally just every type of chance. Like he's getting on the end of crosses. You saw that against Werder, but he's also getting on the end of through balls, and those are much bigger chances. Those are much better chances. He has the technique for them. His hold up play is somehow like better because there's more people around him, I think. And in this game, he gets the ball in a channel, he runs, he continues on, holds the defender off, and finishes for his second. That's a great goal there. The first one also just right place, right time, occupying the center backs. That's what you want your striker to do in all situations. And whether it's him or it's deflecting in off a defender, like he's going to be the reason that ball ends up in the back of the net. And Kareem Adeyemi like seemed very grateful, good teammate stuff. Jokingly like looked like he said something to him about it stealing the goal and then sticks his tongue out, laughs. So good vibes all around. Sergio Garassi is all of a sudden in all the positions you want to see. It's like what I've said, like you can't be wasting these early years of his contract because based off the expense, um, he's going to be a little bit older. Like there is a chance he stays fit and he stays capable of doing these great things, but you're clearly seeing what we paid for in these last two matches, which is world class potential. And obviously, he needs to keep doing this to kind of make up for the amount of money we spent on him. But he's finally starting to do that the second Nuri Shaheen steps out of the dugout. So, very happy for him. But Pedro, who is your dud of the week?
Oof, my dad. That's a hard one because I think the obvious one for this match would be Gregor Kobel. And I'm probably gonna stick with him because I haven't seen a performance from any other player in the match today that really disappoint me to the point that would clearly just pop up in my head and say, no, this guy is the clear dud. Now, for me, I think unfortunately for Kobo, it was like a mistake. And as we said before in the spot, individual mistakes kill systems, and that completely just changed momentum of the match. And it was still a mistake. Like it was not even like that much pressure. Like if he took an extra touch or was more balanced surrounding the ball to actually make the turn or try to just kick it long, I think he could have avoided Shakhtar coming back to the match at that point in time. So in that sense, I don't think there's any other guy I can just call it out for this award, unfortunately, because Kobe is a great keeper. And I was even questioning myself, depending on the next manager. Of course, now we know who it is, but if we have an actual, like, more experienced possession manager and he likes to play with his goalkeeper constantly with the ball at his feet, I'm not sure Kobo is that guy. That's the thing. As much as I love him, and that's unfortunate for me to say, but Cole is my dud. And yeah, I don't know. Like I think with the ball at his feet, he's really below the standards that we might be looking for in the future. Not saying I went to him Dortmund to sell him, but that's something we need to consider. But besides that, is a great shot stopper. But tonight he's my dad.
So overall in his career, up until this campaign, he got better every single year in terms of shot stopping. And this is his worst campaign in over 3 years as a shot stopper. And I'm not at the level of scouting, data analysis, whatever, to predict next season where he's going to be. But as a slightly more educated, semi-rational, occasionally rational fan, however you would want to say it, the concept of Gregor Kobel has gone of selling Gregor Kobel for me has gone from no, like, even if you get a little bit more out of a different player, just selling your best players, your leaders, is not helpful. But it's getting to the point where we're seeing some negative shot stopping stuff statistically, and we are also seeing some blatant mistakes. So against Bochum, you could say like he was fouled, and there's some other system issues where you want guys showing for the ball, and we don't have midfielders that show for the ball, and that's often why he's forced to go long. Like I think some of those issues are not on him because we don't have midfielders that are good at getting into space a ton of times, but it's at the point where I'm having a serious think about it. And if you have, the club should hopefully, I don't know if they do, but they should hopefully have some guys that are a little bit better at data analysis and a little bit better at scouting. And they should be having a serious look at who Gregor Kobel is. And is he last year's elite shot stopper? Or is he this year's below average shot stopper or somewhere in the middle? He's probably somewhere in the middle, or on the better side, I would think, based off the trend data and maybe like whatever's going on around him at the club this year's really hurt him. So I think he's between where he is this year and very good. I don't know where. It's going to be up to the club to figure out where he is on that spectrum and decide whether or not losing that leadership and losing that locker room figure is worth what you're going to be able to improve on the pitch with a considerable windfall, assuming Chelsea next year makes the investment, because the way they spend, it seems like that could be a realistic option. He doesn't fit their age profile, but they could make a slight change because he's not old for a goalie. Goalies can play for a very long time, and they might really want a guy to come in so they can compete right now. And we'll see what happens because their goalkeeping situation right now is beyond dreadful. And that's the main club length. I don't think the Manchester United rumors are even remotely attainable anymore, given the financial situation they're in currently, or at least the situation they seem to be in currently. But let's get on to our next piece of business. Oh, I have to have my dead of the week. Marcel Sabitzer, please do
Oh,
something. Please do something.
I thought
Um,
Kobo was your dad for a second.
no, he was yours, no. So I gotta pick my own, and it's Marcel
Yeah, you made
Sabitzer
a
because
full speech about him, so that's why I thought he was
yeah,
your dad
because
as well.
because I wanted to give my opinion on whether or not we should sell. Anyway, Marcel
Got it,
Sabitzer.
got
I
it.
don't need to say anything about his performance because there's not a ton there. It's not his worst of the season, but he's just not doing enough midfield stuff for me. Um, so he needs to get on the ball more. He needs to pass the ball forward more. He needs to participate more as a defender. He needs to he just needs to do more, and he's not really capable of it. The physical decline has started to reveal itself, and it's only going to get worse. We need to get off the contract, and I hinted before, like he's had so many opportunities to fail. Where is Kiel Watyen's opportunity to fail? Because for all we know, Kiel Watyen is good because that's all we've seen at the top flight level. Like when you have put him in front of a top flight crowd and he's on the pitch, he's been good. Um, his two appearances unequivocally good. His like not just good for a 19-year-old, like pretty good. They're Bundesliga level performances.
Yeah,
His
I think it
first
was Neuer's
performance is
farewell match. He was
yeah,
pretty good.
yeah. So his first performance, I would say, is good for a Borussia Dortmund player, regardless of age of anything. Like if he was starting and played like that every week, he'd be really good. But his second performance was good for a 19-year-old. If he's good for a 19-year-old, he's better than what Marcel Sabitzer is doing right now. Because what Marcel Sabitzer is doing right now is just not good. Um, yeah, he's not a passenger in the side, but he's not moving it forward. He's not moving the side forward. He's not keeping us ticking on. Like there's some passes in this where he just looks like a little lost. He doesn't know which way people are running. He doesn't know where the space is. He's not getting into good areas. Um, Even if his finishing is down this season, even if he was finishing the chances he's gotten to XG, he'd still not be impressive to me at all. So yeah, he's my dead of the week. Let's move on. Niko Kovac, 1.5 year deal announced. Um, so first, I just want to go through a bit of his history, and then I'll ask Pedro for some actual analysis. So Niko Kovac finished mid-table with Frankfurt. He then won the league with Bayern, but he ended on less points than the preceding and following year. And he had some issues with older players like Arjen Robben, specifically with training, if I remember correctly. Some of the older players were not a fan. He dealt with considerable issues to big money signings while he was at Bayern. Um, Coutinho was a big money signing. He had James. According to Tolisso, got injured and was never really the same player he was projected to be after that. So has some minor excuses there. Obviously, like Thiago was there in the midfield, but pretty injury prone player there. Um, with Monaco, this is his best work in my opinion. I some people have said he's flopped at Monaco. I really don't get how that's could be perceived. His second season could have been a little bit better, but the underlying numbers were really good, and they got worse after he left. Both the campaigns while he was at Monaco, Monaco ended up in third. I don't think he completed the second campaign, but Monaco finished in third both the campaigns he was there. The full season he was at Monaco, they had almost on par XG difference with PSG, and PSG obviously has dominated that league. Somehow, the team with the fourth best XG difference won the league because they got a ton of variance going their way. That was in Lille's victory. I was shocked to see it, but for reference, his Monaco side was playing to a zero point 0.9 XG difference roughly, and PSG were a little over one. I think it was 104. So you're talking about like a like a slightly above average shot, uh, a game difference between his side at Monaco and his side at PSG. His Monaco side has a lot of names you would be very familiar with, but they were all very, very young. They were not currently the players they were at. A lot of his defenders were young and are still not like starting. They're at top sides, but they're not performing well. They're not starting. So he has two different center backs that are at Chelsea right now, including Benoit Badiashile, who was just like 20 at the time. He has Srina Pavlovic, who's at AC Milan, but is a rotation option. Chouameni is one of the big names. Fofana is one of the big names, but these guys were like 20, 21 at the time. So they were not the players they are currently. They weren't even the players that ended up getting signed by Madrid or whatever big clubs they're at. Um, because they were just much younger. They hadn't broken out yet. So I think he really got his Monaco side overachieving. Like I said, they performed worse after he left. And then Wolfsburg, he was even on XG difference, finishing in eighth his first campaign. They fell off in his second campaign after selling some pretty good players in Nemecha, or not Nemecha, excuse me, or maybe Nemecha. But the biggest sale, it was Nemecha and Van de Ven. They sold, I believe, and then he ended up getting sacked. And they're doing better, but that's because they have a genuinely really good manager there now, in Ralph Hasenhüttl. So I wouldn't knock a guy for not being able to make something out of a weird side, and then having Ralph Hasenhüttl, who is notorious. Like that's all he does is he takes weirdly constructed sides and makes them work. Look at Southampton. He kept that team up for years. So he's clearly a very good manager. Hasenhüttl, Pedro, what do you think about Niko Kovac?
Yeah, I think there's many layers to Kovac. I think the first one that you mentioned that brought to my attention was his relationship with players, and there is plenty of complaints of senior players that have had the best relationship with him. I was looking at an interview. I don't remember who it was, but remember which player it was. But he was telling like all these guys that had problems. Like was almost like every time he had a different team, he had a deadly enemy. Like for in Bayern Munich, you said Aaron Robin and Thomas Müller. Also was not a fan of him. In Wolfsburg, I think was the player's name that he chose to be his deadly enemy as well, but I forgot his name. But my point is that his relationship with players and the way he like talks to the squad and builds the communication, the trust with the squad, I think that's a point of concern for us, especially with a side that was really fun, or at least most of the guys that were really fond of Shaheen, either if the tactics and the way the team play were working or not. So in that sense, he if he goes talks straight to their faces or goes too directly against the leaders, he might have a problem with the squad, and then we're gonna have a problem in general because player and manager relationship is important in every year's football. Like it was always important. Technically speaking, it's not the profile of manager I would expect Dortmund were to sign. As we're saying before, and just following during the news, I think he was more of a 6 month option. But at the same time, people were angry for him not getting the deal. Oh, White Cal didn't get like a shorter deal for him, man.
Well, that's our next topic. We're focusing on the tactics right now.
Come on, man. But that's kind of all the same topic. It's the same freaking topic. But come on.
I
But
tell me about some Niko Kovac sides. Like, what have you seen from them?
I
Is
mean,
it like
honestly, like
a little more counterattacking or?
a little more counterattacking, in my opinion. Like he's a little more pragmatic with his style, from what I know. Like I think I would say I'm not an expert in Niko Kovac, if I'm honest with you guys. And I think for me, he's more like counterattacking, like a little more pragmatic in his approach. So that's why I say he's not the type of profile that I thought Dortmund was looking. But mid-season, like you don't have many options. Like we had Ragnick as well, which was also like a linked option. And apparently Dortmund had a meeting with him on Monday. But yeah, that 6 month deal and for a guy for Ragnick, I think the squad also didn't wasn't a good fit for his gegenpressing style, like going full out in the press. with the guys we have, especially in the midfield. Like the midfield lacks a little bit of physicality and the ball retention and just capability to go after the opponents and getting possession back. I think the midfield lacks a little bit in that area, so I didn't think Ragnick was a good fit, even though I like him as a game
Pedro, you
manager,
just
of
got my
course.
wheels turning. We haven't done any really fun segments aside from our star and dud of the week in a long time. I'm gonna bring back one that we had last season that we haven't done in
Sure.
over probably a year. It's Conspiracy Corner. You know who wasn't at the meeting with Ralph Ragnick?
I
Sebastian
don't.
Kale. Sebastian
No.
Kale was not at the meeting with Ralph Ragnick. Lars Ricken, Hans-Joachim Watzke, they were. Hans-Joachim Watzke set to step down. Ricken set to move up. There have been some issues with Sebastian Kale, some criticisms. He was apparently a big fan of Nuri Sahin. That clearly did not work out. You know who has an excellent track record as a sporting director? Ralph Ragnick. And so I think that the terms we utilize, like I think Ricken is technically the sporting director and Kale functions as a GM, but like when Ricken takes over as like the president and CEO, you could see certain Sebastian Kale lose out to a guy like Ralph Ragnick or move back into a deputy role depending on what goes on. Um, the club has a high capacity to do dumb things, but hiring Ralph Ragnick would be genuinely incredible. He has contacts all over the world. We on this show have been talking about getting guys from undervalued markets, and Ralph Ragnick is one of the best guys if you want to do that because he worked for the Red Bull Group, which morally evil, but they have clubs all over the world and they have one of the biggest scouting networks in the world. So that's my quick conspiracy there. Um, in terms of Ragnick. And then in terms of Niko Kovac, I think that some of the stuff with like the more defensive teams at Frankfurt, I think he did have a cup win there, which was how he got the Bayern job because his. I was a little surprised when I saw the Frankfurt finishes with that team. And granted, before he was there, they didn't really have the same kind of levels they've hit in more recent seasons since he's left, and that's clearly a very well-run club. Um, so if they believed he was pretty good, then he might be pretty good. And being a little bit more defensive with a weaker side like Frankfurt at the time or Wolfsburg uh, in past seasons, I think he had a bit more possession with Bayern. He wasn't as effective as he could have been, but if I think one of the biggest things we've seen in the two Tolberg matches is just how impactful it can be to have ideas not just about possession, but also letting your fast, talented attackers do counter-attacking football when the opportunity is on. And if he's able to put in a system where we can make the most of those chances, I think that will make a really big difference. And the thing about a year and a half contract is a lot of people are focusing on the fact they only wanted 6 months. A year and a half, I think, is enough to keep Dortmund very flexible. I don't think that stops you from getting a guy like Sebastian Hoeneß. Um, in my opinion, it's a potential extra expense if it doesn't work out. But if you only end up in the Europa League, you can sack him. 2.5 year contract would be the standard for this. So you're getting him down for a full year, and he's basically Sebastian. Let's say you don't get Sebastian Hoeneß. Now you have a good backup option already contracted to the club. You do get Sebastian Hoeneß. You can have maybe a cheaper buyout clause like in that contract where instead of paying him off for the full year, you pay him off for half, and you give him a bonus if he gets into the Champions League. And if he gets into the Champions League, I think it's very realistic for Borussia Dortmund to sell him to a lower mid-table Premier League club for like £1 million, and we essentially get the money back that we spent on hiring him for 6 months, and he gets to move on to a better job. And if he flops and we have to pay him off, I think that getting him down to a 1.5 year deal when like literally managers with a worse track record and a worse history on the job continuously get 2.5 years when they've never worked at a job for over two. They still get 3 year contracts, and if they get hired in the winter, it's often 2.5 year. So I think getting him off 2.5 years is like not a bad thing. I think it could be better. Like in an ideal world, do you want 6 months? Yes. But in an ideal world, do you want to get a guy that's only willing to work on a 6 month contract? Because who is willing to work on a 6 month contract when the industry standard for any top flight manager is a 2.5 to 3 year contract based on what part of the season you're getting hired in?
No, no, I think the deal is pretty fair. Like as I said previously, like you won't get a guy like that for 6 months. Like it's not even fair to the professional. Like for instance, like you get an offer for a real good job in a good company, but it only offer you like a gap. Like option has to be a gap manager for that position, and you stay 6 months and you get the hell out, and they hire another guy. You're not gonna be happy with that. We want stability. You want to be paid and be recognized by your work. So yeah, a guy like Kovac will never get a deal for 6 months. Like I think it would be too utopian to think that he would take a deal like that, and even unfair because like he's looking for his own interest. That's completely fair. And at that point in time, I think it's a decent deal. Like not my preferred option. I did a article earlier and a release before the whole Kovac decision came out about Jonas and why I think it's an opinion article by the way. Why I think Jonas should be the guy Dortmund should bet on the future. And for me, not only he's tactically flexible, but he's a guy that can optimize the potential of some players that we already have in the squad. I think it's a decent or good squad fit to his scheme. Like we have players to play in his scheme already, even though we might need like 2 or 3 signings to really get into the starting 11 and play the football that Honus wants. And also to be already proven in a league like Bundesliga, like a guy who can take a side like Stuttgart, who were fighting for relegation in the previous season, take them to second place ahead of Bayern Munich and go straight to the Champions League phase. Man, that's something not a regular manager can do. Even though they are underperforming a little bit compared to the previous year, they're still pretty good, like in all the numbers. And in XG,
Based off their
they're superior
salary,
to.
where they are, in my opinion, is still overperforming.
Mhm.
Because you can talk about the expectation he set last year, but he lost Seru Girassi, he lost Valdemar Anton, and with Stuttgart, even though they have the money from the two of them coming in and Champions League football, they can't replace the quality and caliber of player they had. They massively
Mhm.
underperformed statistically when they finished in 16th, because they had quality players like that in the squad. But he righted the ship, he course corrected, and if you look at the caliber of players they're replacing these guys with, it's not the most expensive guys. Um, he also has been a bit unlucky. Like one of the most expensive signings he had in defense was Amin Al Dakil from Burnley, and he got injured right at the start of the season, and he came in late, and that can really hurt you as a manager because you're missing one of your big signings for preseason, so you don't get to work with him. They were also trying to increase their squad depth from competing on like just the cup and the league to now competing on three fronts, and they're still in the cup, I believe. So they got some hope there. And the Champions League, like, yeah, they could have been a lot better. I think he was a little tactically naive at times, and he didn't really have a way when certain teams were just going to bunker down and play a bit more tournament football. I think it's going to be a really good experience for Honus to improve on the peripherals there. But what you're seeing over the league campaigns from him have been excellent. Um, the price will not be cheap. We'll see if he's willing to leave in the summer. He stated that he won't make that decision, I think, to March, April, I think it was. that he'll start thinking about that, and I think we'll have a full episode probably
Mhm.
on Sebastian Hoeneß or Borussia Dortmund's full managerial decisions um, between now and the summer. But I think that this current deal with Niko Kovac, it improves us for the rest of the season over Tolberg. There's definitely a higher upside. Like you could say, like Tolberg, because he's an unknown, has infinite upside, but I think it's fair to say that there's a higher floor and a higher ceiling with Kovac. Am I wrong, Pedro?
No, no, I completely agree with you. I think the upside is a little higher compared to Tolberg. I think Tolberg could do a decent job, but I think his ceiling would be maybe getting Dortmund to Conference League, maybe to Europa League if everything works out correctly, but that's not necessarily the case. And in the Bundesliga nowadays, that's really competitive. That's not that likely, and he would be needing to have all these guys fit, and we already have it match out. But with Kovac, I think we have a higher ceiling for sure. I think Europa League, I think he has a high potential to go there if everything works out and he has no problems with the squad whatsoever in terms of relationships and the squad assimilates to his style of play quite quickly, I think we have a shot to European competitions. We at this point in the season, with the season we had, that's the most important thing to get that money and to put ourselves to also in a position to attract players to Dortmund in the next transfer window because no one's want to play in a side that's the 10th place in the Bundesliga or 11th place in the Bundesliga and not having an extra competition to play in an international level. So for me, yeah, I think that deal is decent. I would still, if I have the opportunity, depending how the contract structure is done with Kovac, I would go for Hoeneß in the summer if you have the shot at it. I think we have a much higher ceiling with him, and we have much better prospects with him. And I
Well,
think we Borussia
we'll
Dortmund
talk
say,
about Honus in full at a later date, but let's get into our final topic. So, Dortmund's two prospective uh, Champions League. I don't even know what you're supposed to call this round because it would be the round of 16, but now it's the round of
playoffs,
six,
knocking
a round of
rounds.
9 to 24. Oh my goodness, ridiculous. Sporting or Club Bruges. Club Bruges, we played. I believe that one was away from home. Jamie Gittins at the double off the bench to win it. Sarah got the opener. I believe that game was 3-1. And Sporting, we haven't seen in a long time. They obviously lost their manager mid-season in Ruben Amorim. Pedro, do you have a preference? Can you tell me a little bit about how our side would match up with either of these sides?
I mean, for the competition, yeah, we gotta know the draw is on Friday. From the two teams that we can face, I think they're both beatable. I think Sporting are not in the best moment right now, especially after Ruben Amorim left. I would be really scared if we were facing Ruben Amorim Sporting Lisbon. But since he's not there and they're still trying to figure things out, I would only be scared on the potentialities of the individuals in that squad, like Gyökeres, like Pedro
Sexy
Gonçalves, those
Baz
kind of
Dost, you
guys.
mean?
Mhm. Oh,
What? Baz Dost is a former Sporting striker who scored at a pretty much
no,
exactly the same
no,
rate
no. Sorry,
as
Gyökeres and
Gyökeres,
Pedro
but his
Gonçalves, the
agent
midfielder. So
wasn't.
yeah, but there's a bunch of other players.
Yeah. G-
Uh,
sorry. I have to explain my comment, Pedro. Gyökeres was scored at a similar rate as Baz Dost for Sporting, but he's much better looking is the thing. So sexy Baz Dost for me is, and his
Jesus Christ,
agent
no,
is also
Bastos was like,
constantly in Fabrizio Romano's DMs. Like I don't care that you scored 3 goals against Estrella and Medora in front of 1,000 people. Like do something else to impress me.
Gyökeres, come on, he scored against City. What else the guy needs to
Uh,
do to impress you? And I thought you were talking about a guy named Bastos. Like I didn't understand Bastos. What the hell is Bastos?
Baz Dost,
But
Bundesliga legend
yeah,
Baz
yeah,
Dost. Come
yeah.
on.
The
I'm exaggerating
Dutch
in
guy,
my
the
hate
Dutch
for
guy.
Jokerez. He is a good player. He's not Baz Dost level, but
Yeah, but still, yeah. I mean, I'm not afraid of neither of those sides. Like we, except from a few individualities in Sporting, it's like I think we played not as good as Bruges in the like the I think it was the first game in the Champions League league phase, but still
we
like
beat them with
we were
Nuri
with Nuri
Sahin.
Sahin. It was a completely different scenario. Not afraid of them, and I think we have a pretty okay opponents if we eventually reach the round of 16, either Lille or I think Aston Villa, right? It was Aston Villa. So I think we have a decent way until the quarterfinals, and until then, I think it's going to be tough because they're probably going to face either Liverpool or Barcelona potentially. But I think it's a decent run, and I think we can definitely beat any of those teams, and I think we can have a good shot at the round of 16.
Smashed Aston Villa in preseason. Lille, French. How good can they be? I don't know.
But
I haven't
that
seen
was
them play this year.
preseason,
I'm gonna be honest.
and we know what happened after.
Uh, you know, the way Ali always says is, with the Champions League, they try and rig it for certain players to return to their club. So that would line us up with Aston Villa, um, because Matson's there. And I don't think there's a big like Atalanta Aston Villa thing. So I think we could be lined up with Aston Villa if we beat Bruges or Sporting. I don't think, is there a Sporting player? I don't know. Anyway, so I think that they'll rig it for us. We'll get Bruges and then Aston Villa, and we beat them both, and then we lose to whoever we play because they're a much better side,
Yeah.
whether it's Barcelona or whoever, because those teams are unreal. Anyway, Pedro, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I want to plug Dortmund Dispatch. I want to plug BBB Buzz. Read my articles and Joey's articles. We're gonna have more writers coming in. And if you want to go to my personal account at Del_Pedro23. And it was a great episode, guys. And I see you guys next time.
If anyone told you I have a personal account, I don't follow Dortmund Dispatch everywhere. We're going to be putting out TikToks regularly now. We're going to be on YouTube Shorts. We're going to be posting all our episodes and maybe some other content coming up on YouTube. And as always, every app you can get a podcast, we are there. If we're not, please let us know and we'll add it. That'll do it for us. Have a good one.